What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here with the one, the only Eagles fan, AC. AC, bro, what's going on? How do you feel? Your team's in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, so in 20 years of being a fan, this is the sixth NFC championship that I've witnessed. In the previous five, we're 1-4. So it's fun. Yeah, I guess it's always nice to get to this point, but obviously it seems a bit different this year because obviously we're playing the undercard, which I think rightfully so. When you lose the MVP of your team, you're the best team, but people always kind of doubted you, saying, even with Wentz, guys were doubting us, saying we didn't play anyone tough all season long. And this was the game I really wanted throughout because everyone thought Minnesota was better. Obviously, the Rams are gone. And then watching that Saints-Rams game, I wanted the Saints to win, but I did think the Saints offensively would have been harder to stop than this Minnesota. We'll get into everything, but I do like the matchup against the Vikings, and it's good because it's 1 versus 2. Regardless of what you thought during the regular season of who was better, this can prove it right now.
Yeah, the Eagles, like you said, they're embracing the role of the underdog. They're even going as far as actually wearing dog masks. AC, if you were at the game, would you participate and wear a dog mask?
Yeah, if you could find one, because they're sold out everywhere in Philadelphia. I think you're going to see in the stands that there's going to be upwards of 15, 20,000 out of 70,000 that are there. Yeah, you're just going to go in the stands and see this. But it worked. I think it works. It pumps everyone up. But it's funny because really, this is the first year we've really seen where like every single team is vying to be the underdog. You know what I mean? You have the Patriots because of that article that they always have a chip on their shoulder. They believe that no one believes in them. The Jaguars are the same thing. The Vikings are the same thing. And the Eagles are the same thing. So technically, we have 4 teams that are pumping themselves up because they believe they don't get enough respect. You know what I mean? So it's kind of funny
that's how the NFL and sports works. You're just trying to you're trying to get as much motivation as you possibly can. I don't know why you would need very much. Because you're in the NFC and AFC championships and you're 1 game away from the Super Bowl, but it is what it is.
Well, I think too, just like with the Eagles being underdogs, is that they were the number 1 seed. They didn't lose the meaningful game. Obviously, they lost at home. They lost against Dallas, which we didn't have any starters in. So I think that's what kind of irks them the most is that they're so good at home and they're still not getting any credit, especially against Atlanta. They were a 6 seed playing a 1 seed, right? Pretty crazy to be underdogs. Obviously, they pulled that one out, and the Vikings look good, right? I'm an Eagles fan, so I say it a bit differently. Is people say the Vikings was like it was fluke and the odds were against them, but going against Julio Jones in the red zone and giving them 4 shots, that's pretty impressive too. The odds weren't in the Eagles' favor when we were watching that game, and they got down to the 6-yard line, 1st and goal. Against even just a team with Julio Jones and not scoring there, I think that was almost more just as remarkable. Obviously not because, maybe not more, but just in my mind it was because that's tough. They had 4 shots at it. And obviously Marcus Williams missing that tackle was huge. But I like how this championship has ended up, and it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, like you said, 2 teams that nobody really thought would make it, especially with 2 quarterbacks named Keenum and Foles. It's 2 backup quarterbacks, and like they're going to be the deciding factors in this game. And the reason why I say that, these are the 2 top teams against the run. It's going to be difficult for either team to, get the ground game going. So that it's going to be interesting to put the ball in the hands of essentially 2 backup quarterbacks. You also brought up the home field for the Eagles. Like you said, they're 8-1 now. They're 7-1 in the regular season. They lost 1 game, but it was a meaningless game. So in terms of meaningful games, they're 8-0 at home. And I actually found the statistics this time. They only are allowing 13 points a game at home this season and 280 yards per game, which would be the fewest in the league in terms of points, and then the 4th fewest in the league in terms of yards at home. So the Eagles definitely, especially defensively, dominant at home. And as for the Vikings on the road, their last road win was when, AC?
Was that against the Packers, week 16?
I meant in the playoffs.
I don't know. Was it against the Eagles?
Nope. It was 2005 Randy Moss, the old Packer game.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
their last road win. Really, if you think about it, though, they've had a lot of home games. So, I mean, you could say that, yeah, they haven't won on the road in the playoffs in a long time, but at the same time, almost every time they're in the playoffs, they played at home. So
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of difficult to say that, but just
and people are talking like I've brought this up. I think it's very similar to the Atlanta team playing against obviously a dome team coming into Philadelphia. It's going to be around the same temperature. It's still like people are like, well, the Vikings are it's not going to be as tough because it's not going to be like sub-zero, but still it's going to be slick out there. It's still going to be, I'll talk Celsius. So it's still going to be about 5 or 6 degrees Celsius, which with a little wind, that's still cold. You know what I mean? That's still outside. Obviously it's not going to be like a frozen tundra. But I still think the Eagles have an advantage against the Vikings in that aspect of it as well.
Okay, so let's dive into the game. We're going to talk about the Eagles offense versus the Vikings defense, Vikings offense versus the Eagles defense, and then anything regarding special teams that we think either team has an advantage in. Starting off with the Eagles offense, AC, I'm going to let you kind of have the floor and ask you what do the Eagles need to do well in terms of offensively, because everybody's looking at this game as a tough, hard-fought, physical football game, an old-school defensive game. What do you think the Eagles need to do to score points and win the game on offense?
Well, I guess we'll talk first about Foles because a lot of people are saying that the Eagles aren't going to be very successful running the ball. I think against Atlanta, which I think you've mentioned this before, obviously Minnesota is the second best, you can say the second best defense in the NFL. But you could say their personnel is somewhat similar to Atlanta, especially their front.
Yeah, I've said that.
The front seven. And so the way I still think we're going to run the ball.
To put it, I think they're similar. They're faster, or I mean, they're not faster. They're bigger. Not as fast. But I think that also in terms of their defense, I think their defense does favor in terms of over the Falcons defense when you're on the road against the Eagles team that is about overpowering you like they did against Atlanta. I think they do fare a little bit better in terms of matching up in that regard. So that's something to point out, but like they are very similar defenses in terms of just personnel. They don't really play the same. They have totally different schemes, but they like just bigger in the Vikings, faster in the Falcons. So I do, like I have said that before, I do agree that they are similar in a way.
So I think we're going to be able to run the ball, especially inside, because obviously Linval Joseph has played very well. Wisniewski on our offensive guard and Warmack have been very good. Kelsey's been very good. The one thing I think was we're going to be able to run inside a bit more. Yes, Linval Joseph's good, but Stevens today, they're I think a rookie defensive tackle for Minnesota who's played a lot this year. He was ruled out today that he's not playing.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so this brings up a point for me. I brought this up in the recap of the last few games. The Vikings have played the highest percentage of snaps along their defensive line. That means Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, there's Daniel Hunter, their starters, their front four has played the most snaps this year. And a lot of people actually haven't realized in the past few games, they haven't been getting a ton of pressure. No. Like if you actually watch, like they don't get a ton of pressure with their front four as much as they did in the beginning of the year because they're tired, they're worn out. And I think it plays into the Eagles' advantage that they only have 5 guys. They only play 5 guys.
Yeah.
They have those 4, and then they have Brian Robinson. So, like, if the Eagles are able to, not even if they're able to run the ball at the beginning of the game, because they probably won't, in my opinion, be able to run the ball very successfully at the beginning. But if they're able to stay with it and it's a close game and they can wear the Vikings out, then that goes to their advantage because that's what the Saints did last week.
Yeah. And especially outside, a little cooler, right? We have 2 big backs that can run inside. So that's what I'll say about the run game. But say if the run game stopped, obviously, like you mentioned, it's going to come down to Nick Foles. I think the number one thing for Nick Foles in this offense is they need to get to 3rd and short. Last game was really the first game of the season where I really saw the Eagles, which I'll give credit to Peterson in their play calling. I really saw the Eagles. Don't worry about big plays. You have Foles, short passes, runs, get it to 3rd and 3. And we watched a lot of conversions against Atlanta, which is funny because obviously in the when Wentz was playing, it was like 3rd and 8. Like we would get stuffed and he would make these unbelievable plays on 3rd and long, which obviously we've mentioned is not sustainable. So I think with Foles, it's going to be maybe some screen passes. I think there's going to be a lot of screen passes. I think there's going to be a lot of slants. And with Foles, he just can't turn the ball over. And I think he looked like that against Atlanta because obviously against the Giants looked very good. Week 15, 16, 17, not so much. But then last week, he, 20 for 27, only 7 incomplete passes. Looked like he was smart with the ball. And I think Peterson's going to figure some good plays out. The one thing I will say is Jeffrey, even though he's lost to Minnesota a lot, has obviously Rhodes is playing at the best he's ever played. Not to mention that, but I'm just saying he
not
has
last week.
No, yeah, obviously they targeted him last week, but if you look at Jeffrey's stats against Rhodes, they're not bad. When he was a Chicago Bear, so he has gone against him. Trey Waynes is decent because I think Trey Waynes is going to be able to stop Torrey Smith, and now you're looking at inside is Newman going to be able to stop, right? Doesn't Newman normally play inside?
It's Newman and McKenzie. I think they switch.
Are they going to be able to stop Aguilar? That could be an interesting matchup, which we did say as well in Atlanta, but Aguilar didn't really get the ball because it was more dink and dunk and short passes. And then looking at the tight end, I think they're going to try to stop Ertz because they do have 2 talented linebackers that are on the field most of the time in Barr and Kendricks. And obviously their safeties, depending on how they want to do it. Harrison Smith's great. The other injury we're going to be looking at is Sendeo. He didn't practice all week. He's still in concussion protocol, but they think he's going to be out of it by game time. Because if you look at that hit and the way he was out.
Was he not limited in practice at all this week? No?
No, he didn't. As of today, he was still in concussion protocol. I guess so whenever this video comes out. So this would be, I guess, Friday afternoon. He was still in concussion protocol, but they said he'd be fine to play. They said he's questionable, but he should be fine to play. That changes things because that makes their safeties really like a huge deal in this one. And yeah, Foles just has to do what he does. Control the ball, not make stupid throws like the first throw of the game that should have been picked off, but it was PI. We'll see. I think they're going to maybe take a couple shots. Obviously, Foles isn't Breeze, but without Sendeo in, they had their way with that defense. I think it's the first time we've seen a team have their way with that defense, especially in the second half. So I think they're going to take some things with that. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good match. Like not taking any way, and obviously I'm more pro Eagles, so I'm more talking about what they need to do. But the Minnesota's defense is great. I do think though that Peterson's going to have a game plan that is going to be short passes and maybe try to get them to commit, and then maybe send someone long and he did look more confident, which was the whole thing with Foles is confidence. So that's kind of my take on the Eagles offense versus the Vikings defense.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with a lot of your points. Just throwing a couple statistics out here. The Eagles quarterback, Nick Foles, he's 0-2 against Mike Zimmer defenses. And obviously this is probably the best defense that Mike Zimmer's ever coached. Vikings led the NFL in both total defense and scoring defense, allowing just 15.8 points per game. So it's going to be a low-scoring game, I think. It's just what offense can do a little bit to get them over the top to win this game. I mentioned the Vikings defensive line reps. I think that plays right into kind of what the Eagles want to do. Like you said, get Nick Foles into manageable third downs, run the ball, control the tempo. And last week they did a really good job of controlling the tempo and kind of controlling time of possession because they had 96 yards on 32 carries last week. Now, that's not sexy at all, but like they made the game close because of it, because they were able to hold on to the ball. And by doing that, it makes the game a defensive game. That's exactly the game that the Eagles want to play. So if they can do the same thing this week, I think that's going to be big. A couple of the big matchups you mentioned, Alshon Jeffrey versus Xavier Rhodes, that's going to be big. I think Torrey Smith and Waynes are just going to be running 40-yard dashes the whole game.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think they're going to be doing anything. Nelson Aguilar, I think, has a little bit of an advantage inside. I was disappointed that they didn't take advantage of that last week, so I hope to see that this week. Everson Griffin versus Vaitai, I think it's a huge matchup because I think this game really more than anything comes down to which defensive line and offensive line can dominate the game. So Everson Griffin, if he's able to get after Nick Foles, it completely changes the game. But obviously, like you said, Peterson will try and find a way that he's supported, and there's going to be a lot of short passes so that the rush can't necessarily get there. Unless it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and they can't run the ball and they can't get those short passes, and then you're in bad situations. Another thing I think is the screen game for the Eagles versus the Vikings. They're pretty creative in that regard. They did some things with Jai last week. I want to see if that kind of works.
That was the big play in the second half there that helped us get points on that drive when Steven Wisniewski took 2 guys out back-to-back when he was pulling. Like, that was insane. Like, he literally blocked the safety, and then the corner was right there and blocked him in 2 quick plays. And I think that was the biggest offensive play of the game for the Eagles, maybe even for the whole game. Because that was at least 35 yards, I think. And that
was a huge play. I don't know. I don't remember what down that was on, but like, Eagles are a pretty good screen team all year, and they find different ways to do it. So if they can do that this week, that's obviously going to help Nick Foles be in good situations with the screen. So watch out for that as well. And that's basically all my notes on the offense versus defensive matchup. We'll switch over to the opposite side of the ball. Vikings offense, Eagles defense. I'll let you start once again. What do you see? What do the Eagles need to take away, firstly, against the Vikings? And then who are you kind of worried about stopping in this game?
Let's start with, I guess, if we're going to take away anyone, I think it's going to be Diggs, because Diggs is quicker. And I like what Thielen has done. But going back to the injury front, he is going to play. But he did sustain a back injury against the Saints, and I've heard just from on the NFL Network that they said that he has a tough time bending down. So he's going to play, and he's still going to make big plays. But, you know, Thielen at maybe it's more sounding like 75, 80%. Like, he's actually, there's something up. Because they said whenever someone says that he's playing because he can't make the injury worse, that's kind of like, I've been there. I've even been there. That's not a good feeling. For sure. Like, where someone's like, so you're in tons of pain, but they're like, okay, you can play because you can't injure it even more. So he's going to be playing through some pain. And if it's his back, that's tough for a receiver running. You know, it's going to be somewhat cold. I think in the cold, it's worse in the second half after you sit down and you're at halftime, and then you have to come back on the field and start running again. That's going to be tough. And so that's why I'm thinking Diggs, and I'll give Rudolph. They're going to be, I think Rudolph, the thing with Rudolph is obviously Jenkins has had a career year this year, and he's proven that he can cover any tight end, slot receiver, running backs. And so I think Diggs against Jalen Mills or Darby. And I just think they are good. Diggs and Thielen are good. But I think when we've seen this defense exposed, it's normally been against very good wide receivers. Like, I think Jalen Mills is good enough to cover a guy like Diggs. I think Darby, if he doesn't, if he just keeps him if he keeps him in front of him, but that could be an issue, right? We've seen Mills get burned on a lot of double moves, but it looks like they tried to figure something out against Atlanta, and that didn't happen. So don't get beat deep. But they do have, it's going to be it's an even matchup, and you could obviously say Diggs against Darby or even Mills has the advantage.
And like, I was just going to say, if you could stop Julio, I think you can stop Stephon Diggs. Not saying that Stephon Diggs is bad. I'm just saying he's not Julio. So if you could take him away, and it's not like Sanu is that much worse than either guy, I would say. Sure. So And the difference here, I think, is, okay, what's Pat Shurmur going to do as opposed to what Steve Sarkisian did? That's my question. And I know you're not a big Pat Shurmur fan, but I've been a fan of what he's done this year.
Yep. Well, and the thing is, to me, is like I'm just a big Jim Schwartz fan, which I think you're a fan of Schwartz because Schwartz does have a kind of a Belichick vibe to him, and he's obviously
he did come from the whole Belichick
for sure. Thing. But he has this very like a very analytical. He's not really talking on the sidelines. He's just always in his own head thinking about every single thing that's going on, and I think he's going to be ready. Another matchup. We'll talk. I do think McKinnon. I'm not really worried about Latavius Murray. I
agree with this.
But I think McKinnon, if he can get outside, like we saw in the sweep run against the Saints, and we saw Coleman, who is probably slower than McKinnon.
I don't know about that.
Well, so even if they're even, we saw Coleman obviously have more success because I think Murray definitely is a little more between the tackles and he's quick. He can get outside, but I think that's going to be key if they can get some screen passes to him. The one thing I do like, the Eagles have been very good against screen passes because, when I watched the Tennessee versus New England, right? Tennessee had this thing where as soon as they saw guards pulling, ready to get into zone, they'd step back. When a good defense, when you see a screen like that, you got to just go to the guy right away. Sure. Yeah. And we've seen, and the Eagles, like what? I had that stat where 42% of the snaps were either 3 yards or no yards or loss of yards, something like that. It was like 42% of the snaps against Atlanta. So we can stop. I think we're going to have to get pressure. And then let's talk about Keenum. I think Keenum's been really good. And obviously a lot of people say kind of his Favre-ness where he's not afraid to take chances. And he does have a great arm. I would just be worried if I was the Vikings, he can't make those passes because he's going to be under pressure. I don't think he's seen a defensive line like the one the Eagles have, especially because they're always rested because it's almost like a line change on the line. I think I would be interested to see what he does under pressure a lot. Because if you look in the second half...
He was under pressure against the Saints a lot.
For sure, especially in the second half when they weren't as successful. Because I think he did get hit. I remember him getting hit quite a bit. On the inside, I think you brought this up, which is a good point. I think on the preview is on the inside. Yeah, we can get pressure on the inside, but we got to get pressure on the edges, which who knows what's going to happen, right? Because obviously Brandon Graham's been very good. Vinny Curry's been so. Chris Long at times has been good. Derek Bernard's been good, but it's just going to be interesting to see what we can do on the outside because I'm not sold on the Vikings offensive line. I think they've been good at times, but they do have an injury at guard. Their center was on the injury report this whole year. The rookie, one of the better offensive lineman rookies. It's going to be interesting. I do think, though, this Eagles defense does match up against this offense because they're very similar. You could whatever I said for the Eagles to beat the Vikings defense, it could be easily reversed. I think the Vikings might take
it's a little different, though.
But I'm just saying the Vikings have the potential to take more shots down because Keenum is definitely a better quarterback and more confident than Foles.
The Vikings,
but that could also hurt him.
The Vikings are a more aggressive offense, I think. I think they like to throw the ball down the field a little bit more. They do like run the ball a lot like the Eagles. But yeah, I just see them kind of throwing the ball down the field a little bit more, which I don't know if is a good thing against Schwartz, who likes to blitz, and you don't really have a lot of time to do that. So I think Keenum, like you said, he's going to have to make the right decisions, but also he's going to have to make quick decisions because not only is their D-line probably going to be favored for most of that game in terms of the matchup against the offensive line. Like you said, there's injuries. I really think Fletcher Cox is going to have another huge game, which is big against the run and the pass. He just fucks plays up all the time. And, will he have time to throw the ball down the field if Diggs is open? I don't know.
And what they were saying too, of the defensive line is because they might be doubling Fletcher Cox. So look for Timmy Jernigan to maybe be an X factor too as the other defensive tackle, because he has shown promise this year. And another thing I want to bring up with both teams, this is actually the Eagles had never been, obviously besides the guys that were out for the year, the Eagles had one player on their injury report, which could actually be a factor because it was Ellerby, who's not great.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what do you think about the Ellerby?
We don't have a backup, right? He's our middle linebacker. So it's going to have to...
and he's not very good.
I know, but so it's not going to be... So it would be like... it would be Grugier Hill. It would be either Nate Jerry or...
And that's the thing, like, typically against, like...
Or Najee Good.
The thing about this is that sometimes you don't really need a Daniel Ellerby because maybe you're playing a team that likes to pass. Maybe you're playing the Saints I don't know. Saints, for example, right? And you don't need that third linebacker for a lot of the game. But against the Vikings, you are going to need that third linebacker.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, because we can't just play nickel, which we against most teams in the NFL, right? Most have three receiver sets. So we play a lot. We do play a lot of nickel. But at like the last play of that game, we were in a 4-3.
Yeah, there are at times on first down and red zone that you need.
So it's going to be interesting, but and we do not have a backup because first we lost Hicks, and then Joe Walker took over, and then he got out for the year, and then Ellerby is questionable, and I'm kind of leaning towards hopefully he plays, but it's not looking good at this point, which could be an issue, but we haven't really seen much from Ellerby to see if it's a difference, but we don't have the guy. So that's the problem. It's like we literally, if you go on the Eagles,
don't have another guy.
We don't have a middle linebacker because we play so much nickel. And I think Bradham and Kendricks have been really good. I think Bradham's been one of the more
do you think that Schwartz may get a little creative there and then maybe start putting another D lineman or something out there in that case? Maybe go to like a 5-2 or something like that?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I also like the way he brings blitzes. Is we blitz a lot with nickel, anyways, right? It like Jenkins blitzes a lot more than most safeties. You know what I mean? And then
or maybe they play another safety and Jenkins plays.
Yeah, because then if that was the case, it would be Corey Graham, who's looked okay at times when he's had to play, because he is a guy from the Schwartz system, so he does he's kind of followed Schwartz around. There's always, there's defense coordinators that always have those guys, right? And I think Nigel Bradham actually was a very similar situation as well. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to come down. Basically, it's going to come down. Can Keenum make all the throws? Which DBs I think are going to make mistakes? I think that's the key. You can't have blown coverages, and I can't be all Eagles here. Where if we're looking at both teams, I think the Eagles defensive backs are more prone to a big mistake play than the Vikings are. So I do think the Vikings have that edge, especially with a better quarterback, a guy with a better arm. Not to say that, what Foles is doing is great, but Keenum can make those throws. And I've seen Foles make those throws, but he just seems a little lacking a bit of confidence. But last game was a good sign.
Yeah, I'd also say just on the negative side of Keenum, he is more prone to mistake. And I think you're also going to see what quarterback makes a mistake in this game. Might dictate, because field position more than anything might be a deciding factor in this game. If, a team gets the ball starting at the 35 on average as opposed to the 15, what team's more likely to win in this type of game?
Yeah.
Probably the team that starts on the 35-yard line.
Well, and hopefully, I think we could see some turnovers similar to the one when we saw when Griffin had his back turned and it hit his hand, and then it was an easy pick in the first half for the Vikings against the Saints. Yeah. Remember, like turnovers like that, where it's a tip pass, like it wasn't a bad throw or anything.
Yeah.
Unlucky situation.
Those are kind of luck, though.
Well, no, and especially,
I'm talking about like Keenum rolling out and throwing it into triple coverage for no reason.
For sure. And we did see like it worked out. Obviously it didn't work out on that one throw, but I think the biggest one that I was like, and I think I said in the group chat, I hope he does it against the Eagles, was when he rolled out and could have ran and lobbed it up to Diggs, who was right in front of the end zone. But there was like 3 guys around him. It was good because it was a great throw, but it just throws like that. it's nice when they work, but
or like in
it's not
Foles'
surprising.
case, I could see Foles like a guy's running right at him and he just chucks it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. But I do think Foles, the lack of confidence helps that Foles would just take the sack.
Okay.
Because I think
just throwing scenario.
in the last 3 games, he does take a lot of set, where especially when he wasn't doing very well, if he didn't see anything, he just would take a sack or try to get some yards back. So we'll see. I think it's gonna be a good game. Obviously, I think the Vikings are favored, and maybe it seemed that I'm doing more things of how. So basically, if you're a Vikings fan, just take whatever I say, and then the Vikings have to do that well. The opposite of what
exactly.
I said. Yeah,
it's hard to talk. Honestly, I've done a bunch of these previews. It's hard to talk about both sides because one side is the same. Like if they stop this, then you're gonna lose. If they do this well, you're gonna lose.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So whatever I said, just be like, okay, that's what the Vikings need to stop, and we can. And the Vikings are a great team, and I'm impressed what they did in their fan base. I didn't really like how the Minnesota media was just like all over Eagles fans for some reason this week.
I actually feel a lot of confidence from the Vikings fans.
I know, but like they were going in and like they had all these things where it's like Eagles are crazy people, like don't go there. It's like a gang. If they lose and they're wearing your jersey, you got to take it off. Like we're in like the firms or something. Like I went there against the Giants.
No, I heard that about Buffalo Bills fans, and I went there and wore my jersey, and it didn't matter. So
no, and I was in Philly against the Giants.
Yeah, but you're an Eagles fan. That's not
home opener. But I'd still see you would still see like animosity. Like everyone's gonna get booed. Like you go to a hockey game, and if you have a different jersey, they're gonna boo you. But it's like playful.
Or if you even go to a Canucks game with a Kessler jersey on, you'll get booed.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I do.
So it's going to be a great game. It's pretty crazy. Only both these teams one win away from a Super Bowl. I do think that the Eagles are more healthy. We didn't really talk about the game last year, but because it was such a poorly played game by both teams, and somehow
I looked into the game and I was like, there's a lot of injuries for Minnesota in terms of their offensive line.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of things that were different, and I'm like,
there's a kick return, right? A kick return touchdown. All the guys that got our offense was besides our offensive line was completely different. Like Doral Beckham Green, guys like that.
Last stat I'll mention before we make our predictions: Case Keenum in cold weather has 2 losses versus the Panthers versus the Packers. So that's something too.
No, he beat the Packers.
Oh, I mean,
week 16.
Yeah, he beat the Packers, but he had 2 bad games, I should say. Not 2 losses,
for sure.
2 bad games.
Yeah.
So he played poorly against the Panthers, and he played poorly against the Packers. They did win the Packers game 14-0, right?
16,
or something like that.
16, because Panthers. So the defense played so well.
They won that game, but he didn't play very well, and they lost the Panthers game, and he didn't play well at all in that game. So that was one of his worst games as well. So that's another.
And I do think this underdog thing is it keeps working, right? You do whatever you can, and obviously, like you said, you don't need it, but I think they're really embracing it because
the Jaguars game and the Patriots game, like both teams are trying to be the underdog. It's actually kind of funny
for sure. Yeah, no, that's why I'm saying. That's why they made it. Like when I was watching Good Morning Football, which actually is a great show. Than
when they said Blake Bortles was a franchise quarterback, I do like that show.
No, yeah, they have some good stuff. And they're pretty funny.
Nate Burleson picking against the Patriots every single time.
Yeah, that's funny. So, and they were saying, like I said earlier, like it seems like all 4 of these teams are trying to be the most underdog. Like everyone doesn't like us, which is that's what you do in sports, right? You kind of put out something that's not, it doesn't
even if I mean, you played sports, like you played football, so like you knew you were maybe the favorite, but like you still had motivation for some reason or another. Like wasn't
in our thing. We were like the perennial team, and we lost in 2 provincial championships against teams that we shouldn't have. So I can see that it does happen. When there are upsets like that, right?
Maybe you guys were too cocky.
No, exactly. When you win pretty much every game during the season,
Yeah,
you have you have no problems going up to the final game, right? Similar to like Atlanta, right? Like obviously it was a different scenario because
you
our
need
games
to
were close.
have
But
adversity. I feel like championship teams need adversity to win, you know?
yeah.
Like it's very hard to have no adversity all year and then just go and you're probably going to get your ass kicked at one point.
Yeah. And it's crazy with no Wentz that the Eagles are one game. And I think regardless we win or lose this, I think it just proves, we don't have a lot of big free agents. We have everyone mostly locked up. I think this proves that this team was built well regardless of Carson Wentz. Obviously, we only had to win one game to get to this point, and in the playoffs, anything can happen.
I think this game will really prove something. But I mean, you won that game, which you were an underdog, so.
Yeah, so we'll see. It depends how we lose. But no, it's been awesome that this I guess the first time since 2007, right? First time NFC Championship since 2007, and then obviously there was 2000, 2001, 2002, or no, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004.
Wasn't it 08?
08, yeah, 08, yeah, against Arizona when Arizona lost to the Steelers after. See that, one game away from the Super Bowl, anything can happen. It's after so many years, you just don't know. Like you said, right? You don't know when you're going to be back.
You never know, unless you're a Patriots fan. All right, let's get these predictions out of the way. So I'll let you go last. Okay. So I'll pick my pick is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Shocker. I did pick the Vikings to go to the Super Bowl, so maybe you could just say to me that I'm picking both ways so I can't be wrong, but I'm really not doing that. Okay, so I picked the Vikings to go to the Super Bowl before the playoffs against the Patriots, but I don't know. For some reason now, I thought that for the Vikings to get the Super Bowl, the one team they didn't want to play, ironically, was the Eagles. I thought that the team that could beat the Vikings was the Eagles. So because in part, they're very similar teams, their home field is taken away from them. And there's something about that defensive line matchup with that crowd that I think is going to be big about this game. I think the Eagles just up front, when it comes down to it, the guys up front on the offensive and defensive lines are just better to me. And they're playing better at this moment. And I think that's the difference in the game. I don't really see like the playmakers really, the playmakers will have their plays, but I don't see like an Adam Thielen, a Stephon Diggs, an Alshon Jeffrey, a Jay Ajayi, one of these guys really dictating the way the game is going to be played and breaking the game. I don't see like 200 yards or 150 yards for somebody. I think it's going to come down to who has the better protection. Who's getting the sacks in big moments, who's getting the pressure and the hits in big moments, where's the field position, whose special teams is making. It's all the little things, I think, the coaching as well, that's going to come into this, and in the home fields. And I think the Eagles ultimately have more of those factors that I think they are going to pick up the victory. I forgot what I said for the score, but I'm going to go. I think it's going to be like a 16-13. 13-10, something like that. It's going to be a field goal game. It's going to be very close, and it's going to be very defensive in the teens. Say that.
Yeah, that's similar to what I had. I think I can't remember what I said. I think I said like the same 17-13. So I'll just stick with that. I'll go 17-13 Eagles. I think this game is going to play out very similar to the Falcons game, but I'm just hoping for the Eagles' sake that we don't give away 2 turnovers in the first quarter, basically in big possession, because that's how all the points got scored. So I think if we do that, the defense will play safe unless Vikings are winning for sure if Keenum has a great game, for sure. 100% they're winning if Keenum has a good game. I'm just not too sold. And I think you're right. I think just going around, it seems like, because the Eagles fan, I'm saying just the fans, this has nothing to do with the team, but the Eagles fans are pumping up this underdog, but it's not like you don't see a lot of stuff like we're going into the Super Bowl or anything. It's just like we're going to win. We're the underdogs. But I think with the Vikings, you're seeing a bit on social media that their fans do think they're going to be hosting.
Bro, I have a friend.
They're going to be in the Super Bowl. They're going to be in the Super Bowl hosting it at their home. I feel like the fans really feel like they're going to win.
Yes. I have a friend that's a Vikings fan. And he was 100% certain they were going to the Super Bowl before the playoffs started. And this is a Vikings fan.
Yeah. Wow.
So they're very confident about this team this year. Outside of my boy Anthony, he's always skeptical. But there are Vikings fans out there that are very confident. So it's going to be interesting to see how that whole dynamic plays out.
Yeah, it's it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But it's going to be a great one, and I like how it's the Sunday night and being on the West Coast. It's always nice for that late game because 3:40 is a nice start time, whatever it is.
All right, guys. From AC and Mitch, I hope you guys enjoyed this NFC Championship preview, Eagles Vikings. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We will be having recaps of these games sometime Sunday night. I think the game, what time's going to end? I don't even know. Does it start at
7:30? So it's probably not going to end till around 10-11 Eastern time.
Oh, really? It's that late?
I would think at max
I think
we could start it.
The first game starts at 3, right? 3:30? Like Eastern?
Yeah, 12:30 Pacific. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll see you after that game.
What, you're going to do one in between?
No, we'll do it at the end. We'll do both at the same time. But I'm just trying to figure out the time.
It would probably max be we'd be starting around 11 Eastern. It would be around something like that.
Okay. All right.
Like around 8 o'clock.
We'll try and get all the guys out, and then we'll also have a pregame, whoever can make it on there. And if you guys have any questions regarding this game, the other game, the NFL in general, Brady's thumb, we'll discuss all that stuff. And thanks for watching. Mitch and AC. Again, we're the Bottom Line View. Peace out.